ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिः यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवांसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति नः इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नः तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्ददातु ॐ शान्तिः 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 यो अन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाच इमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयति अखिलशक्तिधरस्वदाम्नान्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान्नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथाबोधं विष्णुतत्त्वविनिर्णयम्. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to friends who've joined for part 30 of Atharvana Upanishad, also called Mundaka Upanishad. So let's again think about all the rishis, Atharva, Angirasa, Satyavaha, Angirasa, Shuanaka, and all the acharyas who have given us the bhashyas. The devata is Aksharanamaka Paramatma, and the Chandas is Anushtup Chandas. So last week we finished the second Kanda, second Mundaka, first Kanda. So Ditiya Mundake, Pratama Kandaha, we completed this last week. So what was this Kanda all about? A brief, very brief cap. So this whole Kanda talks about the creatorship of Brahman. Okay, so that is the whole idea of this particular Kanda that we have done. I think over 2 or 3 months, we have dwelt on this particular Kanda and how Angirasa teaches Shuanaka. Shuanaka is a big, performer of Vedic yajnas, and he takes the yajna kunda itself as a metaphor to explain how Bhagavanta creates the universe and bring forth all the jiva into existence to work out their samsaras and so on. So that was the discussion, a whole-scale discussion of not only the evolution of matter, but also the emergence of various sentient beings, starting from the Tattvabhimani Devatas, how they appear, how they come out of Brahman, in what sequence they come out of Brahman, and then all the jivas, and how do they come out of Brahman, and how the jivas acquire the material body, and how they do various stuff. And that how in the jivas pindanda, how the various abhimani devatas are there performing various functions, and how this Paramatma or Aksharanamaka Paramatma who creates everything not only is creating, but he also enters into his creation and looks after it. Okay, and then finally, we understood from that idea that how he enters into everything of his creation is the philosophy of Antaratma. Yeah, Antaratma, as is described, the last word of the ninth verse, Antaratma is a very key concept of Vedic philosophy, that Paramatma enters into everything, looks after them. He creates them, he enters into them and looks after them. And then, of course, Angirasa gives another very, very key point about understanding the creatorship of Brahman, in the sense that his kriya, that is his karma, yeah, the way, the actions that he does, and the way he does it with his jnana and icha, they are all one and the same. So, Bhagavanta's jnana, Bhagavanta's kriya are one and the same. His kriya is his jnana is his kriya. All his infinite auspicious attributes are him. Yeah, they are not external to him, and they are the same. And then Angirasa then finishes off in the last few lines, Yetad yo veda nihitam guhayam so avidya grantim vikirati iha somya. And he says, he who understands this, that inside me, I am a jiva. This body is not me. This is just a material covering that I have. I am the jiva. I am inside this cave in this thymus. And in this cave, I am there. And inside me is this Paramatma. And this Paramatma is an abode of infinite auspicious attributes. He has created this whole big universe. And his Kriya Shakti and his Jnana Shakti and all his attributes are one and the same because of his Achintya Adbhuta Shakti. He who knows this, what happens to him? He is wonder-struck with how amazing this Paramatma is. how wonderful this Paramatma is, how great he is, how omniscient, omnipotent, and all the superlatives that you can think about how he is and how he is a unique entity. He is not like us, he's an entirely different entity. And he is amazing. So once we get that idea, then we develop an adoration of the Supreme. Then we start liking this person, and we start thinking about him all the time and develop that relationship, a personal relationship with Paramatma. Each one of us have a personal relationship with our Antaryamin. Yeah. And with that, we make our spiritual onward journey. And at some point, we get his grace, and then we follow the path of liberation. So that is the journey. There isn't a quick solution here. That is very clear from all the Upanishad studies that we have done, that there actually isn't a quick fix here. There may be folks out there who want to give us a quick fix by charging us $10,000 or $20,000 for a course of 2 weeks and 3 weeks and so on, but that is not going to give us liberation. The liberation is what our ancient rishis of the Vedic times documented in the Upanishads have given us, which is the eternal rules by which Paramatma wants us to conduct our samsara. So that is the rules of the Upanishads. Yeah, and there is no shortcut to it, but we can all start at some point. And Angira says that start from the fact that you search for Paramatma inside you. Don't go out elsewhere and search for him all over the place. If you search for him inside, and if you know he is inside, then when you go to these temples and you see all these vigrahas, then you can appreciate that there is a permeation or the presence of that Paramatma, because he is all pervasive and he's got a very special sannidhana in this vigraha, and then you can do your contemplation in a temple. But first step is inside us. So that's very, very clear from the last verse of the previous kanda. Purusha eva idang vishwam karma tapo brahma paramrutam yetad yo veda nihitam guhayam so avidya grantim vikirati iha somya. So then the question that comes up, this again is a fundamental idea of Vedic philosophy. You are telling me that you have to start your philosophical journey assuming that he is inside you. Then our rishis then ask, why should he be inside us? Yeah, I mean, I understand him being in pervading the material world and looking after it, but why should he be inside us? So yes, this concept of Antaratma and Antaryamin in Vedic philosophy, we have understood, but what is the purpose of the Supreme residing in us as Antaryamin? Okay, so we need to think about this particular problem of Vedic philosophy. It's not a problem. It's just an interesting approach to thinking about why do we have an Antaryamin? We are Jivas, and inside us is the Antaryamin, and why should he be there in the first place? So I've just put a small little discussion point there for us to contemplate today in this satsang. 1 minute, and if anybody wants to share their ideas as to what is the purpose of the Supreme residing in us as Jivas as Antaryami. No problem. Sarat Chandrajit.
Unless he gives prerna, we can't move, right? Unless he has to give the prerna for the jiva to act upon. Otherwise, unless if he doesn't do that, nothing moves.
Thank you, Pratibhaji. Excellent, fantastic. Saratji?
So I have a slightly different view. So if I may take just less than a minute, we all heard Ramana Maharishi saying, Nani Yaru, who am I? And he has been asking this question all the time. So when we think of who am I, we think that there is somebody existing inside us, some self inside us, some self inside us. But at some point of time, he actually meant that there is no smaller I existing. The smaller I is created because of coordination of all the senses, like the pictures on a movie reel moving so fast together so as to create a moving picture. So same thing, our senses, they act and coordinate so fast to each other that this illusion of I is created. So enlightenment, I believe, is removal of this illusion. When then suddenly you realize you move from the smaller I to the bigger I. And I think Antaryamin residing us, I would like to think it more like a very sophisticated computer. So we have all the computers. So the brain functions exactly I've been studying connectomics for the past 25 years now, published. So more I look at it, more it seems to be a very, very sophisticated computer, million times more sophisticated than a computer, which gives us all the reasons to believe that we are all connected. So perhaps we are like one of those isolated computers which is connected to the internet, which is the Paramatma, and we are like the smaller servers who are accessing the internet. That's my view.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Thank you, Sarajji, for your interesting insight. I would just like to remind all of us that Atma and Antaratma and so on, they're all non-material entities, and the only way of knowing that is through the Vedas, which is Apaurushaya, and it's the Vedas that gives us that information. So I would prefer to stick for this particular forum that we are talking about Upanishads and Upanishad Chintana and Veda and Vedic contemplation. I have some reservations on pseudoscience, but I think we should stick to our discussions around what the Vedas are saying and Antaryami is saying. And your initial discussion on what Ramana Maharishi states is interesting, but all that I would request is we do need to look out for those hypotheses, whether they come out from the Vedas or the hypotheses have been framed and one is seeing evidence for that in the Vedas. So those are the issues for individual contemplation. So this is for individuals to make a decision. But our goal in the satsang is very, very clear that we are interested in the Apaurushaya Vedas and what is it that Angirasa is telling to us, rather than us forming a hypothesis and reading that in the Upanishads. So I would probably leave it at that. Anybody else wants to add in here? So if there are no further
Madhu, is it part of the Swarupa? Like, that's the way it's designed. The Paramatma will be there with the Jiva, all the time. So it is the Swarupa, it is the rule. And so it can't be changed.
You're right, Sudarshan. That is also one way of looking at it, because the Vedic the Vedic views, it gives you all the universal rules of how things are done, how the constitution of the universe is. And if the Veda says that there is the Atma and there is Antaratma, this is the rules of how the Vedic transaction happens, then Paramatma, he is very much capable of staying away from and have its own rules, but he kind of abides by the rules of the Vedas. So his self-limitation, this is what is called a self-limitation, which is one of his glories. And he has designed that this is how the universe has to operate, that there is a Jiva and that I am in everything. Why? So here is one, we did discuss this, isn't it? I think Pratibhaji mentioned that as to why he is even in Jivas. We may be sentient, Nitaji.
I think he pervades every part of the universe. So we are also part of the universe. So he has to pervade us as well by rules. And in chapter 15, it says Bibhartyavya Ishvara. So he is supporting the whole universe. So we are part of it and he's supporting us as well.
Yeah, so thank you, Sushrut, for that. So that is that's also an interesting view in the sense that there is an inevitability of this. When we say this Paramatma is Brahman and he is pervaded everywhere, by definition, it also means he's pervaded us as inside our jivas. Thank you, Sushrut, for that contribution. So Devan, yeah.
Sorry, just a question. I mean, he can pervade the universe, but he doesn't. You can still control from not being inside. I think the question I think we need to discuss is why it is necessary to be inside.
Yeah, good question. So that is so there is this concept called Satya Sankalpa. There is a concept called Satya Sankalpa, that it is Paramatma who chooses that this is how he wants to do the affairs of the universe. Yeah, so that is one point about Satya Sankalpa. The other point about this is what the Vedas tell us, that the Apaurushaya, Anadiritya Veda, the laws of universal existence from eons. This is how this whole conduct of this universe and samsara has happened. So says the Vedas, and God continues to abide by this, and he would not want to break the rules of the Vedas. So he confines himself within the rules of the Vedas. So those are the two views, but think about it. But here is another view on this. We were discussing. Yeah.
Sorry, Suresh.
Yeah, Suresh, yes, go for it.
Yeah. So maybe what came to my mind was that, I mean, if our destination is God realization, and where do I look for God? I mean, it is he could choose not to be Antaryaman. He's all powerful. But then he chooses not to be so and follow the constitution that he abides by the constitution, so that we look for him within us. Otherwise, where would we look for him? So maybe that's what was coming to my mind.
Yeah, thank you, Sureshji. Wonderful, wonderful. So here is a very general view of why he pervades everything. Yeah. So why does he pervade? We were discussing this yesterday at a different program. Swarupa Pramiti Pravruti Lakshana Satta Traividye Para Anapeksham Swatantram Tadapeksham Aswatantram. So all of us in existence are dependent beings. Okay. He who thinks he is independent, he is doomed. Okay. Forget about he who thinks he himself is Brahman. That is an entirely different sad situation. We are thinking about us as dependent beings, that we are nobody. And we know that in our daily experience, we cannot make a decision for tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen to us 10 years from now. We don't even know why we have come here. And how is it that we have not chosen our parents? We have just come here. And then we don't know where we are going to go. So for folks who think they're independent, Brahman themselves, they need to reflect upon the experiences of life. So our own experiences of life actually tells us that we are very dependent creatures. And that dependence, in what are all the aspects in which we are dependent? We are dependent for our own existence, yeah, satta, our own reality and existence, we are dependent on somebody. For every action that we have to do, we are dependent on somebody. And that is what the whole Karma Yoga understanding, Nishkama Karma Yoga is all about. And the power of knowing something outside with all the Indriyas, etc., etc. We have not created anything. We are dependent on these Indriyas and the Tattvabhimani Devatas. And our own essential nature of what we are, also we have not made it ourselves. These jivas are eternal and each jiva has its own swabhava. And that is also we have not determined. So in all these aspects, if you look at the essential nature, the power of knowing and becoming known and the power to act, all these we are dependent. Okay. And our scriptures tell us one reason why Paramatma is in all of his existence is to look after this, to give them their reality, to make them known, and also give them the power of knowing, and also giving them volition, and also looking after their essential nature and so on, is what we think that Antaratma is there, is the Vedic view. It's one of the Vedic views, but the reason why I thought we should have this very interesting discussions that's going on here is there is a bit more of a fundamental reason as to why Antaryaman is there. And I think Suresh Kankanwadiji captured that point in some aspects, I think. Why? Because that is how the second Khanda starts. Dvitiya Mundake, Dvitiya Khandaha. Avihi sannihitam guhacharam nama mahatparam atra etat arpitam yejat pranat nimishat etat janata sadasadvarenyam param vijnanat yad varishtam prajanam. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful verses. And again, I want to say, in this particular Kanda, we have some of the most profound and popular verses of Mundaka Upanishad. We have some of those verses, and this is one of those that gives you the core idea of why is he as an Antaryamin inside us. Avihi sannihitam guhacharam nama mahatpadam atra etat samarpitam yejat pranat nimishat etat janata sadasadvarenyam param vijnanat yad varishtam prajanam. He gives you an answer. So this we are very clear, okay? Nihitam guhacharam nama. Okay? So if we have this problem, then we can't progress further. But we have discussed this so many times. Nihitam guhacharam nama. Where is the soul? There are folks who think that there is no souls. That is their problem. That is a Buddhist view, that there is no souls. That is their problem. I just wish they reflect upon Gita chapter 2:12. Natvevaham jatunasam natvam neme janadipaha nabhavishyaha. Go back to those verses. 2:12, Krishna has categorically said, you are there eternally, I am there eternally. Okay. We may be different, but we exist anyway. So we have to first accept that from the Vedas, that there is this jiva, and this jiva probably is somewhere in the hrit, as it's called, and then that hrit is the middle portion of the body. Some of us feel in some schools of Vedanta that middle portion of the body corresponds to the thymus, and in that thymus there is a cave, and in that cave is the jiva. Inside the jiva is the Paramatma. Okay, is the view there. not made up view. And this is one of the things I need to stress. Everything comes from the Vedas. We can have all sorts of hypotheses here. We can have our own pseudo science of what everything is. But if we are in the purview of looking at things from a Vedic perspective, we have to search for the evidence in the Vedas. All across the Vedas, this is what they say. Katha Upanishad, Guham Pravishto Parame Parade. Okay. Anoraniyan Mahato Mahyan Atma Asya Janto Nihito Guhayam. Brahmavid apnoti param tadesha abhyukta satyam jnanam anantam parma yo veda nihitam guhayam parame vyoman. Gita 13.8. Who wants to tell us Gita 13.8 and Gita 15.5? Let's recite that. Who wants to go for 13.18, please, and 15.15? Anand ji, go for it.
ज्योतिषामपि तज्ज्योतिः तमसः परमुच्यते ज्ञानं ज्ञेयं ज्ञानगम्यं हृदि सर्वस्य विष्ठितम्.
Go for the 15.15 as well, Anand ji.
सर्वस्य चाहं हृदि सन्निविष्टः मत्तः स्मृतिर्ज्ञानम् अपोहनं च वेदैश्च सर्वैरहमेव वेद्यः Vedanta Kritveda Videva Chaham.
Beautiful, Anandji. Thank you very much. So Krishna has categorically said in these verses, mate, I'm inside the heart. Okay. You guys are there in that cave in the heart and I am inside you guys. Period. Dahara Vidya, Chandogya Upanishad gives you exactly where it is. Okay. So if we have that Shraddha, so everything starts with Shraddha, right? Shraddha is what? Shraddha is the faith of existence of things beyond our sense perception. So that is where the Shraddha starts. And when that starts, Shraddhavan labate jnanam. How do you get that jnanam? You go to the Vedas. What do the Vedas say? The Vedas say this. Okay. I have only put the verses here that talk about the position of Paramatma. For the position of the Jiva, please go to Prashna Upanishad, 5th question that addresses this in great detail as to where is the position of the Jiva? Exactly the same Guha. Okay. So that is very clear from the Upanishad, and Angirasa here gives us a reminder. Where is he? Nihitam Guhacharam Nama. Very close. Sannihitam. Okay. He is very close to you. Okay. Guha charam, guha and charam, guha, inside you. Guha also means very guhya shastram. Krishna says guhya, guha, that means secret. And he is not only inside you, okay, but he is secretly inside you, at least from your perspective, because we don't know him. He is very secret for us at this point, but he is inside you. And doing what? Doing various activities, charam, various activities of what? Satta, Praviti, Pramriti, Satta, Traividye, Lakshanam. Yeah, he is looking after all this for us. He is doing various activities. Forget about folks who think that Brahman is actionless. That is their problem. But the Vedas are very clear. Guha Charam. Okay. Guha Charam. He is doing various activities inside the souls as their Antaratma. He who knows, this is very well known, and again Angirasa says, yeah, Nama there means Sannihitam Guhacharam Nama means the fact that he is very close to you as your Antaryamin and doing various stuff is very well known. Very well known to what? To people who are interested in the Vedic studies, because it is described all over in the Vedas. It is extremely very well known. Okay, but here is the question that I was quoting us. But why Antaryamin is there? Okay, here is the most beautiful answer, because our Guru Angirasa started with this word Avihi. Avihi Sannihitam Guhacharam Nama. Paramatma is there. Yes, he does all these activities to look after us, to look after the souls. But here is a profound statement of Angirasa. He says, this guy is inside you as Avihi. Avishkaraya. He is there to show himself to you. He is ever manifest. He is inside you. He is looking after you. And our gurus teach us, he is inside you as your Antaryamin, and he is always waiting for this Jiva to turn around and see him. He is ever manifest. That is why he is there in Antaryamin in Jiva, so that this Jiva at some point can turn and see me. Okay? Will he not see me at some point so that I can give him salvation? So our gurus tell us this. He is so graceful. He is so sympathetic to us, this Paramatma, that he sits inside us and says, "May turn around and see me. See, I have brought everything. Turn around, worship me, be my servant. Then I will take you to my abode." Okay? That is one of the profound reasons that Angirasa gives us. Yes, although other things are fine, reality, pravriti, pramiti is all fine. But primary reason why he is inside the sentient beings, Angirasa gives a new twist to this discussion, is avihi, avishkaraya, to show himself to us. The question, of course, is, are we ready or are we seriously interested? Okay, that is the problem here. Are we ready and seriously interested? And if we are ready and seriously interested, that guy is always there. Avihi. He's always there, ever manifest. And that is why we have done these famous verses, right? Atmavare drashtavyaha, shrotavyo, mantavyo, nitidyasitavyaha maitreyi. And the reason why I have put this verse is, in the subsequent verses in this particular kanda, these ideas of dhyana yuddha. Okay? You have to have that fight with God, is what Angirasa says. Yes, he wants to show you, but you have to fight with him. How do you fight with him? Yeah, how do you have a battle with your Antaryamin so that he shows himself to you? Okay, so those are all some of the mantras that are verses that are going to come next. Atmava are drashtava. You have to do it, but you have to have this process. Are we ready to do it? Some of us may be, but if we are ready, then there is a chance, because this guy is avihi. He is always avishkaraya. He is ever waiting for us to see him, but we are not seeing him. Okay? So this ideas of pratibimba and bimba, we are very, very familiar with. So this bimba is the antaratma or antaryamin, and the pratibimba is the jiva. So, and this bimba controls this pratibimba. That is what is bimba pratibimba vada in Vedanta. It is not that this is a reflection and the jivas are illusion, because once the mirror is gone, the jiva is gone. That is not the meaning of what the Rig Veda says. Rupam rupam pratirupo babhuvaha. It gives you the philosophy of dependence. This pratibimba is dependent on the bimba. Whatever the bimba does, the pratibimba does. So that we can see in our day-to-day life. Every morning when we go and comb our hair, we can test it out, the bimba-pratibimba relation. Such is the relationship between Paramatma and Jivas. So generally what happens in this equation, when you comb your hair tomorrow, if you consider you as the object of the bimba, when you comb, you are seeing the pratibimba, right? You are seeing your reflection on that mirror. That is the colloquial example. Okay? Normally, bimba sees the pratibimba, whereas the philosophy of the Upanishad is that you will attain your salvation when the pratibimba sees the bimba. Okay? So when the reflection itself sees this bimba in front of him, that is what avihi is all about. Okay? And when do we see that? That aparoksha jnana has to happen, isn't it? So if there are two birds, and as I said, our birds are going to come soon in Mundaka Upanishad. Dvasuparna sayuja sakaya samanam vriksham parishashva jate tayor anyaha pippalam swadatti anashnan anyaha abhichakashiti. That is what we are doing. This jiva is eating all these fruits, very bitter fruits. This guy is sitting there. He is avihi, avishkaraya. He is there very next to him. But he's looking at him. What is this jiva doing? Turning away from me and doing stuff and suffering. Samane vrikshe purusho nimagnaha. Anishaya shochati mukhyamanaha jushtam yada pashyati anyam isham asya mahimanam iti vita shokaha. Yeah. Language, follow the language. Never read one's hypothesis into the Vedas. See the language of the Vedas and understand, gain the knowledge from it. Yeah. What does it say? Jushtam yada pashyati anyam isham. The jiva, when it sees this antaryamin who is different from him, Anyam Isham. Yeah. Who is this guy? Mahimanam. How great he is. Iti Vita Shokaha. When it attains that situation, when it turns towards the Antaryamin and ceases, that is when it has the capacity to attain moksha, which is Vita Shokaha. Okay. Beautiful verses that gives you an idea of why this Paramatma is inside. Avihi. Remember that Avihi. He is there so that he can show himself to us. Are we ready is the question. If we are ready, and this is the process. This is what the Upanishad says. Yeah. So what does it say immediately? Mahatpadam. This guy who is there in yourself, inside you, Jiva, he is Mahatpadam. Okay. So from now on, this particular Kadda of Upanishads talks about the greatness of Paramatma, greatness of Brahman, greatness of Vishnu, or whoever you want to label him as. He talks about the greatness of this person who is inside you as your Atharva, so that you can actually see him. Okay? And it reminds us, Avihi Sannihitam Guhacharam Nama Mahatpadam. That Antaryaman is the great goal, is the greatest goal. Yeah, Mahat Padam. Yeah. So remember this Katha Upanishad verse, Vijnana Saratir Yastu Manaha Pragraham Van Naraha Soadvanaha Param Apnoti Tad Vishnoho Paramam Padam. Okay. Yama is categorical here, okay, to Nachiketa as to what is that biggest, greatest goal. That greatest goal is Vishnu. Tad Vishnoho Paramam Padam. That Vishnoho is Mahat Padam, who is Sannihitam Guhacharam Nama Avihi, waiting for you to see him. Okay, so Mahatpadam, he is the greatest goal. Yeah. Next, he says, this is interesting. Avihi Sannihitam Guhacharam Nama Mahatpadam Atra Etat Samarpitam. Yeah. Look at this. Atra Etat Samarpitam. This person inside you, very close to you, everything has taken shelter under him. Okay. Atra etat samarpitam. Yeah. And again, I request, I'm never tired of saying this. We should look at the language of the Vedas carefully, not come with airy-fairy philosophies. Here it's very, very clear. It says, Atra etat samarpitam. Everything has taken shelter under him. Which ones? Which ones have taken shelter under him? He says, Ejat, Pranat, Nimishat, Cha. So you have to look at this. Cha, Nimishat, and Cha. What does that mean? Again, that is the beauty of Angirasa's language, and of course the Atharva Veda, Atharvana Upanishad. And it would be our mistake if we don't understand the gravity in which Angirasa is leading this conversation. Okay. Atra etat samarpitam. Everything is dependent on him. Which ones? Ejat, Pranat, Nimishat, and Cha. So Ejat, Pranat, Nimishat, and Cha. So if these 4 words compressed in this one single word, Angirasa has given everything in the universe. Every damn thing in the universe is under his control. Okay. Ejat. Ejat, of course, has various other connotations. Quick quiz here. Where did we come across this Ejat? In which Upanishad did we come across Ejat? Who wants to tell us that? We did one Upanishad previously where this Ejat was...
Ishavasya Upanishad.
Ishavasya.
Thank you very much, Sheilaji. Wonderful. Do you want to recite to us or tell us that word?
No, I don't think I remember. Tat Ejat, that I don't
Beautiful.
know.
Fantastic, Sheilaji. Thank you. Anandji?
It's Ishavasya. I can't recite that.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, it talks about, Ejat, Anejat, Tad Dure, Tadu Antike. Remember that word? So Ejat comes in that Upanishad also. Here, Angirasa is talking about Ejat. Ejat essentially, in one sense, is things that tremble, things that are fearful. Okay. In that sense, all of the animal kingdoms are fearful to something that is above them. So this is the life cycle, isn't it? This is the cycle of life, right? So you have the ants are eaten by birds are eaten by something else is eaten by something else, because everything below something is always afraid of something above. Yeah. So so that is how it looks like. So all the animal kingdom, anything that is afraid of something that is above them, so that it fears that fear is the easy way of capturing that in English. Anything that trembles or is fearful of things that are above it. All animal species, all the animal kingdoms are all that tremble in one form or the other. So that which tremble. So Angirasa, by saying Ejat, he includes all the animals. Okay. Then he says Pranat. So when he says Pranat, he means that those jivas, those sentient beings that are capable of doing higher levels of activities. Okay, they're capable of doing this. That which do higher levels of activities like suras, asuras, rishis, manushyas, you and me in this satsang. Yeah, so we all come under this category called pranata, where our actions are slightly at a higher level compared to animals, right? Animals do actions, but they do actions only for four: eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. Those are the four actions that they do. But we as humans, or manishyottamas, rishis, even asuras, whether you like it or not, they're doing higher level activities against God, but nevertheless, they're doing slightly higher level activities. And the suras are all the devatas. They're all doing these higher levels of activities. So they all come under something called pranata. Again, jivas of those. And then nimishata. Nimishata is interesting. So nimishata means that which don't open eyes or do not have eyes. Okay, that is called nimishat. Unmesha and nimisha. So those are the words in Sanskrit. Unmesha and nimisha. Okay. So who are called unmeshas? Quick quiz. Who are called unmeshas? Anybody wants to say contribute there? Quick quiz. Unmeshas and nimishas. So nimishas are the ones that don't open eyes and do not have eyes. Okay, Unmeshas are devatas. You know, these Abhimani devatas, and again the Vedas say
Animesha.
Animesha. Yeah, Animesha. So they are the ones that always have their eyes open. So devatas. So nimishas are the ones that don't open their eyes or do not have eyes. So things like your stavara. Okay, so all these trees and stuff, they don't have eyes. So Angirasa captures all of them. The ones that don't have eyes. Okay, that is implying the stavaras. So these are jangamas. Ejat pranat comes under jangama category and nimishat comes under stavara category. Okay, he says all these jivas, in the sense all these jivas in these various pindandas who are doing various stuffs, they are all what? Atra etat samarpitam. They are all dependent on me, on this antaratma. Okay. And then there is a chakara there. By the chakara, we understand also all the jadas, the stone, the sand, and everything else. The inanimate things are also dependent. So that is what Angirasa is saying. Avihi sannihitam guhacharam nama mahatpadam atra etat samarpitam. There are other meanings to this as well. Let's look at three different meanings. So next, ejat, that which moves. As I said, moves, ejat, trembling. Anything that moves is under my control. Anything that breathes, pranat. Anything that breathes is under my control. Anything that sleeps is under my control. So you could also then equate this to three states of consciousness. We are moving in the wakeful state. So wakeful state of consciousness. In the dream state, we may be breathing and dreaming, but there is the dream state. And then there is the deep sleep, sushupti. So even in the three states of consciousness of the jivas, this antaryamin is controlling them. So here is a quick quiz for us. So wakeful, dream, and sleep states. What is the name of the Paramatma as the antaryamin who controls these three states of the consciousness of jivas? Who wants to answer that? Anandji, go for it.
Vishwa, Prajna, and Taijasa.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Anybody else has a different view there?
No, I thought Turiya is all these conditions.
Turiya is the name of it. Turiya is the name of it.
Sorry. So who is going to say about? Sorry.
Jagrada, Swapna, Sushupti.
So that is Jagriti, Swapna, Sushupti. What is the name of the Paramatma who controls the jivas in these three states of consciousness?
Vishwa Tejasa, that was mentioned. But it's
Vishwa Teja Prajna. Vishwa Teja Prajna.
Okay, Prakash ji says Vishwa Tejas Prajna, and Sheila ji also says Vishwa
controlled
Tejas
by
Prajna.
It's controlled by Turiya, I thought. Turiya is there in all the states.
Yeah, so Turiya is the fourth state of consciousness, which is the state of consciousness of the jivas in their state of liberation.
But the consciousness is there behind all these three states, isn't it?
So the consciousness, yes, Sheila.
Behind all these states, I thought that is the one who is watching all these states.
Sure. So if you think about
it's in the Vyuha form of God's control these.
The Vyuha forms, okay, yeah, you can, as you say, the Vyuha forms are various forms that have been described here. There is no difference. If you want to consider that way, that's absolutely fine. So the view there is, at least if you look at the Mandukya Upanishad, the language of the Mandukya Upanishad is very clear. It talks about the four states of consciousness of the jivas, and then it says these four states of consciousness of the jivas are controlled by Paramatma, who is contemplated as four different names. What are the four names? Vaishva, Tejasa, and Prajna. So that is in the samsara state, the jivas have these three, Vaishva, Tejasa, and Prajna. Whereas in the liberated state, that Antaryamin who controls the jiva in the liberated state is called Turiya. And of course, Turiya, Vaishva, Tejasa, Prajna, these three, they are non-different from each other. They are all non-different. Paramatma, we know, right? We have done this a million times. And that's what Brahma Sutra is also, it says, Nastanatopi parasya ubayalingam sarvatrahi. Veda Vyasa has settled that point, saying that jivas are controlled by this Paramatma with four names in four stations, but there is no difference between him. So in that sense, if we want to consider Turiya controls the waking state, that's fine, because there is no, the Turiya and Vaishwa form of Paramatma are non-different from each other. So that is absolutely fine. But the idea there is, this particular verse, Ejat Pranat Nimishat Cha Atra etat samarpitam. They are all dependent on this guy. He is there inside you as your antaratma. Okay. So this is where Angirasa's language is. So we may have any other, as I said, hypothesis and want to read into it. But that is not what we are doing here. We are looking at the verse of the Vedas and grasping the knowledge from the Vedas and not the reverse. Yeah. So then what he says, Yetat janata. Know that person. That is a firm instruction. That is the only thing that needs to be known. Yeah. So if you remember in the first kanda, what was Shuanaka's question? So who wants to remind us what was Shuanaka's very first question when he approached Angirasa? Anybody wants to remind us? What was the question? Kasminnu bhagave vijnate sarvamidam vijnatam bhavati. Remember that one, Shaunako havai mahashalaha angirasam upasannaha papracha. Kasminnu bhagave vijnate sarvamidam vijnatam bhavati. What is it that I need to know primarily, knowing which means that I have known everything else, is the first. That was the question that started this conversation in this Upanishad, and that is exactly what Angirasa is saying. Etat janata. You just know only this that is very close to you. Etat tad janata. Yeah, so look at this beautifully. Etat is there, tat is there, janata is there. Etat is what? That is very close to you as your antaryamin. Tat means what? Tata, that which is all pervasive everywhere. Antar bahishta tat sarvam vyapya narayana stitaha. That is the one you need to know. Okay. Who is that person? Sad, Asad, Varenyam. Okay. This is another interesting word. Sad and Asad. Sat and Asad, Varenyam. Varenyam means what? Vara means what? High. Varenyam is highest. Higher than Sat and Asad. So that we understand. This person who is inside you as your antaryamin is above Sat and Asat. So what does that mean? Sat and Asat. Okay. And again, there are some schools of Vedanta that kind of skew this differently. But Sat and Asat has got various meanings. Okay. It's got various etymological derivations of what Sat and Asat is. In the common parlance, Bhava and Abhava. Existence and non-existence. That is a simple understanding. Sat and Asat. If you go to Paingini Shruti or if you go to Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, you need to go and search what is the Vedic language of what Sat and Asat is. Murtam sad iti samproktam amurtam asad uchyate. Yad anyad vayorscha antariksham cha tat sat. These are all the Shruti evidence you need to see to understand what is Sat and Asat. So primarily Sat means Murta. Asat means Amurta. So Murta means that which has a form. Amurta means that which does not have a form. So that which has a form is called Sat. That which has no form is called Asat in the Vedic language. We need to look at the Prakarana again, right? We need to always look at the contextual relevance here. So when you look at that, So what are all the murtas? In the Pancha Bhutas, what are the murtas? Who wants to remind us? Let's think about the 5 Panchabhutas and then think about what has form in this and what doesn't have form. So who wants to go for that? Prakash ji, go for it. Or Shobha ji, yeah, go for it.
Like
You
Prithvi,
should.
yeah. It's Prithvi and Apaha and Tejas or Agni. The 3 are forms.
And then
Vayu
Vayu and Kam
Akash.
do not have space. They are Amurta.
Fantastic. Yeah. So that is what Madhyandira Shruti says. Yad anyad. That which is different from what? Vayo antariksham cha. Yetat sat. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you very much, Neetaji. So that which has form. So in the Panchabhutas, you have the 3, right? Fire has a form, we can see it. Water has a form, we can see it. Earth has a form, we can see it. Whereas the space, nobody can see space. And at the same way, air, nobody can see. Okay. So that gives you an idea of the Panchabhutas, the ideas of Panchabhuta. So the Panchabhuta comes from what? Mula Prakriti, right? Eventually from Mula Prakriti, what they are all coming from. So when this particular verse in Angirasa is saying Sad Asad Varenya means, it means that he is higher than matter. He is higher than Mula Prakriti. And the Abhimani of the Mula Prakriti is Chetana Prakriti, who is Lakshmi Tattva or Shri Tattva. And he says this Antaryamin who's inside you is above all this, Sadasad Varenyam. He is higher than all the Prakriti. He is higher than matter. He is higher than Lakshmi. Okay. That is one idea that we have to understand, because if we have understood the Vedic pantheon, this becomes very important as to how big this Paramatma is. Yeah. The other thing, of course, is Sat means that which has no defects. And the opposite of that is Asat. Sat means Sat is Nirdushtatvam. And so many Upanishads talk about this, which we will see as we navigate these slides. So Sat means that which has no defects. Asat means that has defects. So if you think like that, Satvika Jivas can be categorized as Sat, Devatas, Rishis, Manishotamas. Asats will be Nitya Samsaris and Tamo Yogyas. This is the whole category of Jivas, okay? We have done this a couple of weeks ago in the Gita Chintanam. So again, he says, if he says Sadasad Varenyam, he is beyond all the Jivas. Okay? So those are the ideas that come out of it, saying that how big this fellow is, this chap is. Yetat janata sadasad varenyam. Okay? And the next one is very, very beautiful. Param vijnanad yad varishtam prajanam. Sorry, we had somebody.
One question.
Yeah.
Muhurta and Amurtas are this Pitrus, right? This is Vairaja, Agnishwata, Barhishat, Sukala. Because
So you can put
Vairaja, Agnishwata, Barhishata, Amurta Pitrus, and Sukala, Angiras, Suswada, Somapa is Muhurta Pitrus.
Okay. Sure. Thank you, Shobhaji. So maybe there is another view to this as well. But we are looking at from an ontological perspective all the real things that are there, the insentient things and the jiva. So your Pitrugana Devatas also can be fitted into the Jiva Ganas, various jivas. Thank you very much, Shobhaji, for that. So the next verse he says is Param Vijnanad Yad Varishtam Prajananam. Prajanam. Okay. Param Vijnanad Yad Varishtam Prajanam. So he is, just to bring you back, he is reminding us. He is reminding us who this Antaratma is. He is saying he is Mahatpadam mate, Atra Etat Samarpitam, everything else is dependent on him. Who are all the everything? He said Ejat, Pranat, Dimishat, and Jadas. And he said, know only him. That is the only purpose. You can know, you can do all sorts of science, pseudoscience, you can do research, you can write books, you can do whatever damn thing you want to do. It is not going to liberate you. The only person who needs to be known is Etat Janata. Who is that person? Sadasad Varenyam. That means what? He is beyond matter. He is beyond all the jivas. And he is not only beyond matter, he is also beyond Lakshmi Tattva. So in this particular verse, when he said Sadasad Varenyam, he has said all this, that he is beyond jivas, he is beyond matter, he is beyond Chetana Prakriti. He is a distinct entity in himself. And also now he qualifies Param Vijnanad Yad Varishtam Prajananam. Okay. Param Vijnanad. Okay, so this is interesting. So who is going to tell us all the koshas, the pancha koshas of our bodies? And perhaps if some of us can tell us also who the Abhimani Devatas of each koshas is. So who wants to tell us the 5 koshas? The answer is there in the slide itself, but go for it. So you have Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha,
Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, Anandamaya Kosha.
Anandamaya Kosha. Thank you, Sudarshan. Beautiful. So these koshas are there, right? So in the Devata Abhimani concept of Devatas, their individual koshas have Abhimani Devatas. And of course, Paramatma is in all these koshas, as you have the Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarshana, Vasudeva, Narayana. So that contemplation also comes. All this comes in Taittiriya Upanishad. So go back and check that Upanishad out. But there is this Vijnanamaya Kosha, right? And then there is the Anandamaya Kosha. So the Vedic view there is the Abhimani of Vijnanamaya Kosha is Chaturmukha Brahma. Okay. Who is going to tell us who is the Abhimani of Anandamaya Kosha? Any takers for that?
Lakshmi.
Mahalakshmi.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sushrut. And who was the other person?
And Pratibha.
Pratibhaji. Oh, thank you, Pratibhaji. So, perfect answer. So, Sushrut and Pratibha got it right. Anandamaya Kosha, the Vedic views. Lakshmi is the Abhimani for that. And for Vijnanamaya Kosha, Chaturmukha is Abhimani of that. And that is why this guy is called Vijnanath. If you go to Srimad Bhagavatam, and our Acharya gives evidence in that situation, Raghavendra Tirtha gives evidence there, says, Vijnana Shakti Rahamasam Ananta Shaktehe. Chaturmukha Brahma is worshipping Narayana, and he says, I am Vijnana Shakti, whereas you are inside me and you are Ananta Shakti. Yeah. Vijnana Shakti Rahamasam Ananta Shaktehe. So Chaturmukha Brahma calls himself as Vijnana. And that Vijnana he calls himself because he is the Abhimani of Vijnanamaya Kosha. How does all this come from? It comes from the Upanishads. Sadasadvarenyam Param Vijnanad. This Antaryamin who is inside you is even superior, higher than the Chaturmukha Brahma. Vijnanad. Who is Chaturmukha Brahma? The Chaturmukha Brahma is Jivottama, right? Brahma and Vayus, they all fall under the category of Riju category of souls. They are the highest among Jivas. And here Angirasa says, this Vijnanath, who is Brahma Vayu, they are Varishtam from whom? Yad Varishtam Prajananam. They are the highest among all the Jivas. Okay. These guys, these Rijus, Chaturmukha is the one in this particular, creation. Vayu becomes the next Chaturmukha in the next creation. So these guys all are Rijus. This Antaratma is even higher than the Rijus because he is inside these guys also and controls them. Yeah. Param Vijnanad Yad Varishtam Prajananam. Okay. So watch the language. That is why this particular chapter of Gita is considered the core of Vedic philosophy and is summarized over 5 verses. So who is going to tell us very quickly what this chapter in Gita is that actually summarizes this concept that Angirasa is bringing out in the very first mantra of the second kanda?
15th chapter.
So Suresh ji says 15th chapter. Anybody else?
Purushottama Yoga, 15th chapter.
15th chapter. Thank you, Padmajadri. Anybody else has any other views? Okay. 15th chapters. Okay, fantastic. Because let's close today's session because there's so much to talk about in this verse. I just want to close this session actually to reminding ourselves as to how big this particular verse of Gita chapter 15, verse 16 to 20 is. Because our Mayavada philosophers cannot provide answer for this. Gita has very clearly told who are all the jivas, what are all the jadas, who is Lakshmi, what is the difference between them, and so on and so forth, very clearly described here. And I am just baffled as to how they can consider they themselves as Krishna. Yes, that is a view, right, of that particular school of philosophy. That guy is starting with is a Saguna Brahman. Arjuna is also, Nirguna Brahman. Krishna is also Nirguna Brahman is the view. But that is not what Krishna is saying in chapter 15. And that is not the view that Angirasa is saying here. Avihi sannihitam guhacharam nama mahatparam atra etat samarpitam yejat pranat nimishat Etajjanata sadasadvarenyam param vijnanad yadvarishtam prajananam. He's saying that so much. Yet we are going to say, I am God. Give me a break. Let's recite chapter 15, verse 16 to 20. Yeah. So who wants to go for it? And I've already reserved Suresh Kankanwadi ji to do the Prameya Navamalika, and we close today's session. So who wants to do the chapter 15, 16 to 20, please?
I can do it, Madhush.
Go for it, Padmaja.
Tvavimau purushau loke ksharaschaksara eva chaksharas sarvani bhutani kutastha akshara uchyate. Uttama purushastvanyah paramatme dhyuta yo lokatrayam avishya pibartya vyaya ishvaraha. Yasmat aksharam atitoham aksharatapi chottamaha. Atosmi loke vedesha pratita purushottamaha. Yo mam evam asammudo janadit purushottamam sasarvavid bhajati mam sarvabhavena bharata. Iti guhyatamam shastramidam mukta maya nakaha. Etad bhutva buddhimanasya krutasya bharata.
Beautiful, Padmaja ji. So that is exactly what this figure is all about, isn't it? So this Lakshmi is Kutasto Akshara. This guy is the Kshara Purusha. There are infinite Ksharas, including the Jadas. So he has talked about Kshara. He's talked about Kutasto Akshara. Then he talks about this Purushottama, who is called as Akshara. So 3 sentient categories are discussed in this particular 15th chapter. Jivas, Shri Tattva, Lakshmi, and Vishnu Akshara. 3 categories of sentient beings are being discussed. These 3 are not one and the same. Categorically discussed that these guys are different. Yeah. So that forms the basis of, and that is why most serious followers of Vedanta would consider chapter 15, verse 16 to 20 is fundamental to understanding Vedic philosophy. And that is what Vyasatirtha has expounded this in his Prameya Navamalika. Suresh ji, over to you. Right, Suresh. Suresh.
Yeah. Hari Parataraha Satyam Jagat Tattvato Bhedaha Jivagana Hareeranucharaha Nichocha Bhavangataha Muktir Naija Sukham Bhutihi Amala Pratipaschat Tastat Sadhanam Dhyayati Kshamayam Pramanam Akhilamnya Yokadeva Harihi.
Thank you, Suresh ji. Yeah, so fantastic. Shriman Madhvamate Hari Parataraha Satyam Jagat Tattvato Vedaha Jivagaraha Hare Ranucharaha Nichocha Bhangataha Muktihi Naija Sukha Anubhutihi Amala Bhaktishta Tat Sadhanam Hyakshadi Tritiyam Pramanam Akila Amnayaiko Vedyo Harihi. Hari Parataraha Satyam Jagat. Jivas are there. So many varieties of jivas are there. They are all servants of God. They are all dependent on God. There are higher classes and lower classes of jivas. Each finds its own destination. Your salvation is the self-realization of your own eternal bliss. That can be achieved only through Amala Bhakti, pure devotion. That pure devotion can come only how? By knowing through the Vedas. There are 3 forms of knowledge. Pramanam, Tritiyam Pramanam, but there is only one that can lead you to Paramatma, which is Akila Amnayaiko Vedyo Hari. Directly comes from this 15 verses. But when you look at this Mundaka Upanishad verse, it resonates that is what Krishna has said in chapter 15. Avihi Sannihitam Guhacharam Nama Mahatpadam Atra Etat Samarpitam Etat Ejat Pranat Nimishat Cha Etad tad janata sadasadvarenyam param vijnanadyadvarishtam prajananam. So this particular verse of Angirasa essentially summarizes the whole of Vedic philosophy that is expounded in chapter 15, which is beautifully reminded by us by Prameya Navamalika of Vyasatirtha, and also Baladeva Vidyabhushana also is inspired by Prameya Navamalika. Baladeva Vidyabhushana of Gaudiya school also picks up the same, and ditto he discusses that in his works. Okay, so I hope this all makes sense, and how our rishis bring out these Vedic philosophies to us and remind us, know the Antaratma. He is always there waiting for you to see him. He is always available for you. You have to make an effort to see him. You got all these ignorance around you. Try and get rid of that ignorance by his grace. Then you can see him. That is the importance of this Antaratma. Okay, then Angirasa, then in the next words, we'll pick it up in the next session. He says, how do you go and see this guy? So what is that interaction with that Antaratma that I have to do so that I can see him? Okay? So those are all the ideas that comes from the next verse. Yeah, yad archinam reminds us. Yeah, yad archinam, yad anubhyo anuhu, yasmin lokaha nihita lokinashta, tadetad aksharam brahma sapranaha tadu vang manaha tadetat satyam tad amrutam tad vedithavyam somya vidhi. Okay, so he does this and then he goes, I can't wait to come to the third verse where he takes the metaphor of the bow and arrow and how you take the bow and arrow and have a battle with your Antaryaman. You have to have a yuddha, you have to have a fight, you have to battle with your bow and arrow to hit the target. What is the target? Your Antaratma. How do you hit your target is how he is going to take us in the subsequent verses. Okay, so hope you found today's session interesting.